on this episode of True Friend with Cory Montell Scott.
I was trending. Like, I was legit trending on Facebook. I was getting so much negative comments and feedback and people threats and people calling me a sorcerer and a witch. And oh yeah, man, they were going in on me. They were like, you don't put the anointing into an app. You don't do this stuff. You know, you're going to take all the musician's job. C-Dub is just trying to, I'm just like, man.
If you need a helping hand, let me tell you about a friend. He won't switch up on you, he'll love you through and through. In your time of need, he'll be a true friend indeed.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of True Friend with Cory Montell Scott. Now, if you want to stay up to date on future episodes, make sure you click that subscribe button down below. I don't know how many musicians I have that watch this show, but I know that we have a lot of tithes and offering, a lot of thanks, a lot of gratitude dedicated to this guy. He has saved the day on numerous occasions for many keyboard players, drummers, really church musicians, period, have used the incredible God-given idea app that he's created known as Loops by C-Dub. And ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show none other than Mr. C-Dub himself.
Hey. Glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me on this show.
Absolutely. And I mean it, you know, every once in a while, God just kind of introduced something into the earth that really just turns everything on top of his head. And you have been able to create something that is globally been so respected and so heard all across the world. So I want to start off by allowing you to say who you are in your own words. Who is C-Dub? And how do you define yourself to someone who has never met or heard of you before?
That's a really good question because, a lot of people define themselves by what they do or the type of work that they do or the upbringing or their status, their title. I just like to define myself as someone who lives life to the fullest, man. You know, I really believe in that. I'm coming more and more to believe that is the way to go. I like to live life with no limits and really seek to pour out my full potential. In doing so, it has caused me to create many products and do many things and travel the world and become successful in many ways. But I don't define myself with the success. I really define myself really by how many people I touch and the lives that I really make a difference in. That's what makes me feel fulfilled.
I mean, truth be told, with what you've been able to do in the last, however, it's been over a decade, because it has to have been over a decade since you've first really globally came on the scene like you have. But God just doesn't give a gift like that overnight. So I kind of want to know what your upbringing was like. Were you raised in a musical family?
Yes. So more my dad. My dad played everything. He sings to this day. He would get on the saxophone. He would get on the whatever, guitar, keyboard, organ. I grew up just watching my dad play and my brother play as well. And so my dad is a pastor. So he I had that in to get in on the keyboard when he would go preach, or he would just let me play even though I didn't know what I was doing. But that's the type of family I come from. Just very open-minded musically when it came to just allowing me to try. And even when I didn't sound good, I always tell people about the church where I grew up, they tolerated me and my brother, until we were able to actually make something that made sense.
What denomination were you raised in?
Church of God in Christ. Yep.
Church of God in Christ birthed so many wonderful musicians, legendary musicians. I mean, when we think of Twinkie Clark, when we think of, I don't even want to get into naming names, but Church of God in Christ has just birthed so many amazing musical gifts. Was there ever a time that you kind of felt like what you had to offer maybe didn't shine as bright in comparison to other musicians that you were on the scene with or in the loop with?
Oh my God. See, first of all, I grew up in the country, man. And so, my church, we were the only musicians there, even in a 40-mile radius, there weren't many musicians. So I didn't grow up around the musicians. So whenever we would go to the state meeting or the convocation and all that kind of stuff, And man, I just wish I could play. I remember sitting back on the pews and just like, man, if I just had the chance, it just felt like it was so far away from me to be able to ever get up there and just get on the organ and play for the choir. So it was tough, man. All I could do was just watch, really. That's all I could do, just watch.
And I know that for me, growing up as a church, well, first of all, I never really personally thought that I would be a church keyboard player. I thought the gift to be able to hear a song and then immediately interpret it to be able to play it without never having heard the song before or any practice was phenomenal. And I never thought that God would take the limits off of me to do that. But he did by me just being thrown into the water. Because I think every church musician, or at least most of us, can say that our first couple times touching the keyboard in church, we didn't know what we was doing.
Right.
My uncle, who was a pastor and also a musician, he said, "Here's how you turn the organ on. All right, now go." I ain't know nothing about that. I still don't fully know it.
I was gonna say, I was just thinking about how I was just saying I would sit back on the pews and look, and I remember one distinctive moment. I remember sitting in the back of the church while Bishop Paul S. Morton was the guest preacher for the convocation, and thinking like, man, if I could ever get the chance to play for him, I would take it. I remember I was like 13 years old. Little did I know that I would actually get that chance. Not only that, but actually travel with him to the exact convocation that I was sitting at on the back row. Now I'm on the organ, waiting for him to say, "I feel like preaching." Come on, man.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
It's a blessing. It's a full circle moment. C-Dub, what inspired Loops by C-Dub? Let's get into it. What I want to know the full story. Where were you when God gave you the vision and bringing the vision from God speaking it to where it is today?
Oh, this is going to be funny right here. Okay, so this ties into Bishop Morton. All right, so right before I started playing for Bishop Morton, I actually quit playing at church. I quit. I totally quit. I just had a bad experience at this one church that I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't need to play at church no more. I'm done. No matter who calls me, I'm not doing it. Right. And so I was about a year in into not playing. I was for real. And I remember I went to Isaac Curry's birthday party, and Trent Phillips was there. And Trent came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, I'm over at Bishop Morton's church, and if you ever think about playing, we have a slot available." I was like, "Nah." I was like, "Nope, I don't." Even that, I said no. I said, "I don't want to play at church no more." So he asked me again a week later. He asked if I would just come fill in. So I filled in one Sunday, and I ended up playing there for 8 years, right? But the point is, because I was obedient to God, right? Because I was not trying to do it, y'all. I'm trying to tell you, I was done. But I started playing at Bishop Morton's church, and there, we do like 12 songs a Sunday, easy. And I had this MPC that I was using for drum loops, and one day the MPC just stopped showing the display. It would work, but you couldn't find anything on there. It was just the display went off. And so I was like, I remember a couple of years ago, I made a lot of drum loops, and I told him, I said, "Yo, don't worry, I'll just bring some on my computer and I'll play them off my computer." And because we were doing so many songs every Sunday, I was just racking up all these loops on my computer. I'm like, man, somebody could use this stuff, And so I literally, one day, I went outside. I was like, I got to figure out how to sell these loops. And so I went outside. I took a picture of myself on my phone. And this was back when the MacBooks had iWeb on it, right? And I made a one-page website. I found this MP3 player where I could sell MP3s with just my picture, an MP3 player, and some text. And I just went live with it one Saturday night, and I just went online. I said, "Hey, if anybody needs some loops, I'm selling some loops for 99 cents each." I only had 30 on there, right? 30 or 40. And I remember that next day, I woke up and I sold $5 worth of loops, and it blew my mind. I was just like, somebody actually bought these, because in my mind, I'm a person where I don't mind slow success, but nothing has to blow up for me overnight. I don't care. I enjoy the journey. I get excited about the fact, okay, somebody bought this $5 a day, because I needed some money and I needed some gas money and I got it, right? And I'm like, okay, so if they'll do this once, they'll do it again, you know. And when I tell you that's what birthed the Loops by C-Dub, and from that day forward, you know, the next Sunday was $12. I was like, what? I was really thankful and grateful, you know, because I understand, you know, residual income. I understand recurring income. I understand digital products that you make once and it keeps selling. And I'm like, if this will make $12, it can make 24, and it can do it again. And it just kept going. It just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going to the point where I'm like, okay. And my website was doing so good. And then a friend of mine told me, he was like, man, you need to make this an app. And I was like, no. I said, my website is doing good. I don't want to mess nothing up. I ain't doing nothing. So he was like, okay. And then about a year later, he came back to me. He's like, Carlton, he's like, you're missing it, man. You need to make this an app. And I was like, I don't know anything about apps, you know? And so he told me, he said, look, either you're going to make this an app or I'm going to make an app and I'm going to sell it to you. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I said, hold on. Okay. All right. I said, if you help me do this, I'll do it. And this was, I don't know if you're familiar with Piano Clubhouse, but Piano Club, this was the owner of Piano Clubhouse talking. This is one of my best friends. And
get out of here.
Yeah. He was like, if you don't do this, I'm going to create it and I'm going to sell it to you. So I'm like, all right. So he helped me create my first Loops by C-Dub app. All right. And the long story short, today, after he started Piano Clubhouse. I helped him get that to where it was. I probably did 500, 600 tutorials on that site. Right. How about the same guy I worked for to help him build Piano Clubhouse got me started with Loops by C-Dub. Then he sold me Piano Clubhouse, and now he works for me.
You own Piano Clubhouse now. That's bananas.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for all y'all do. Y'all helped me plenty of Sunday.
I own Piano Clubhouse now, and he became an executive in my company. He's my media manager for everything that I put out, basically. And it's just like, are you serious? I'm like, why you want to work for me? He's just like, I just want to. I was like, okay. But that's a story that you don't see too much, especially amongst us people, as Black people. You don't see that happening too often. You know, where you see somebody help somebody get somewhere, then they help you. It's just like we help each other. And yeah, so that's the story behind Loops.
No, but to stay on that topic too, talking about brotherhood, Black brotherhood in the church. It is a something that is dying. And so I do think that story is incredible, that it didn't turn into a battle of who's the best, who can do it first. And it wasn't competitive, but it was literally two Black men wanting to lift the other up. And we don't see too much of that. I also wanted to touch on another thing you said when you first started the story. I think if we're all honest, every church musician has probably felt like they didn't want to play anymore in church. Specifically church. I don't know what that is. I unplugged for about 4 or 5 years, had a wife and had a baby before I went back, and I went back by mistake. So, I think it's we give so much, and it's such a taxing thing to have to be available as much as we do have to be available. And then, God forbid, now I only work as a musician. But back then, I had a regular job. And I was also 24/7 available to my pastor. And that stuff can take a wear and tear on you, and you're expected to still be there every Wednesday, every Sunday, every Saturday for youth choir rehearsal, and every time your pastor travel, and be encouraging. And that takes a toll on you. So I appreciate your transparency about that. This is a funny question. One of the coldest musicians I know is a guy from Columbia, South Carolina named Rod King. And I remember in talking to him, he was saying something about your loops. He was like, yeah, man, you use them C-Dub loops. He said he'll get you. So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever came across anyone who's tried to get away with using your loops on their record? Because he's a producer. And so that's what he was speaking of in particular, about using your loops. So he said, you don't do that. That C-Dub will get you.
Man, I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me, text me about it, and then every time I've made so many loops that I just know the sound of my loops. I used to have this thing I call it perfect tempo. We got perfect pitch. But I had made so many. I could just tell you what tempo something was and be like one off from it every time. And so I know what the sound of my loops are, and man, I could name an artist right now that my loops are just on every single song. Like it's just so clear. And some of them get clearance and some of them don't. But don't worry, that I may be silent for a little bit, but like your friend said.
So I don't know who he knew that tried it and got burned, but he told me, he said, yeah, that's C-Dub. You don't use his loops, he'll get you.
Nah, man. I mean, some stuff you just don't do, man. Like, come on, man.
It's about integrity.
Yeah, and I have a way that people can use them, but you just have to go through the certain, But yeah, some folks just, yeah.
This ain't LimeWire, y'all. Pay C-Dub. All right. So after Loops by C-Dub was popular, a lot of people would think that was the cap of what it was that you could do. But you kind of hit the ground running with something that was so innovative. Nobody else but you could have thought about that. I don't know. That has to be a direct response to the relationship that you have with God. Whoop triggers. Insane. So the idea of the app is something that could have turned real corny real quick. And the way you did it was so innovative that it's so fresh. Were you ever faced with people who doubted the success of whoop triggers? There's a culture in the church, specifically the black church, unfortunately, where before we're quick to encourage someone, we're quick to say, oh, that's whack. So did you experience any of that in the developmental stages of whoop triggers?
I wouldn't say in the developmental, like as far as when I think of developmental, I'm thinking before I actually put it out. Most people that I told about it when I was actually creating it, they understood the idea and they were with it. But boy, when I tell you that first, I would say the first month I released it, I can't tell. I got so you know how back in the day Facebook, I don't know, maybe it still says trending, like I was trending, like I was legit trending on Facebook. I was getting so much negative comments and feedback and people threats and people calling me a sorcerer and a witch, and oh yeah, man, they were going in on me. They were like, you don't put the anointing into an app, you don't do this stuff, you're gonna take all the musicians' job. C-Dub is just trying to. I'm just like, man. I mean, and the thing about it is, I created the app to help my dad. I wasn't even really worried about putting it out there. Once I left his church and I was playing for Bishop Morton, I was trying to bring that sound to him. He didn't have any musicians. I told you I'm from a small town, so I was trying to do stuff to help him, and it worked for him. So I'm like, maybe somebody else want to use it, right? And so they just, man, they went in. I'm talking about, it was bad. It was so bad that, I mean, I ended up getting on the Steve Harvey show, which is good, because it was just so much talk about it. I got made the news. It was crazy. It was crazy. But, I always tell people, all that time when everybody was doing that and talking bad, well, I tell you, them sales was looking mighty nice. I'm not even gonna lie. The sales were going up, and then right after that, the pandemic hit. Oh man! And then all of a sudden, everybody's voice and opinions changed, and now we need it. It's just crazy. But yeah, they really went in, man.
I mean, it's two things. Number one is all things working together for your good. But really, we're talking about it right before the pandemic, because I remember it was around that time, around 2019, that the app first came out. I think had you not been sensitive, and because doubt, I'm talking to songwriters, anybody who is innovative enough to come up with an idea that might not even be an app, but maybe even launching a church. The smallest bit of doubt or the smallest bit of telling somebody who you thought was your friend and was going to encourage you and them saying, I don't know about that, can really silence something that God had just for you. And I appreciate the fact that you didn't let any of those things stop you, because you're right. The pandemic hit, and then what? We had no musicians, and people needed to save on money. And, if you're in a case like me, the church I'm in right now, their musician passed away from COVID. And so they were without a musician or had different men coming in that, weren't really committed to the vision of the church. and various other things, and it became problematic. So, what a lifesaver! If anybody, if y'all can learn anything from this, so listen to God, adhere to God, and don't worry about people. Don't worry about think about the story of Jesus. Let's talk about from the point of his birth, really from the start of his conception up until him dying at Calvary. It was nothing but speculation and talk about what he was and what he is. And nobody really knew the whole story until now. We might not even fully know the full story. I can't wait to get to glory because I got some questions. So, C-Dub, you got some other new stuff on the horizon. I want you to talk to us about what's your latest endeavor.
Whew. Well, I got so much stuff happening at the same time. But I would say this right here is my latest one. And even though this was birthed during the pandemic as well, this was actually birthed during the pandemic. Hoop Triggers was before, and then the pandemic happened. But this, What's Your Take, is my music production podcast platform that I created during the pandemic because, a lot of musicians, we weren't doing anything. The gigs were down, the tours were down, there wasn't no playing nowhere, the churches couldn't afford, so we were all just at home. And so I created a platform where I allow musicians to express themselves musically. And what happens is I send out a track. It's maybe just a drum loop and me playing piano on it, right? And I send it out to all of the social media world, and I tell them, hey, y'all, what do you think should go on this track? What do you think should be played on this track? Bass, drums, whatever instrument you play. And so I usually get around 30 to 50 takes on each track I send out, and they send them from all over the world. Now, they don't know what the other person played. They're just playing their part, what they think should be on there. Then I go on my podcast and I review each take individually, and I mesh together the best takes. And by the end of the track or end of the podcast show, I have a crazy track that you just can't produce anywhere else other than like this. It's so crazy every single time. I'm in my 6th season now. This is season 6, episode 3 coming up. And so the musicians love it. Musicians are getting work from it. I just got an email today from one of the musicians telling me that him and another one that participate just got a scholarship to Berkeley because they've been participating in this and they've been honing on their skills. And they also, when they win the episode, they win money. And through this episode, they have been able to buy the computer and software they needed to even apply for the stuff. This is crazy, man. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's growing. The community is growing. We're learning. We're showcasing our talent. And it's off the grid from the music industry. This is not. We're not writing for radio. We're not writing for to what do the people want. No, this is all about just using those sounds you never get to use because everybody tells you we don't need that. No, you can use it on this platform. Let your creativity just blossom and flow. And that's what I love about it. So that's my latest thing at this point. One of my latest things. Another one is my merch store that I just opened up at cdubworld.com. This is something new for me because I've always been in the digital world. So now, I'm going to the hats and the hoodies and the t-shirts and the apparel and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to grow that because that's always been a passion of mine to do as well. And so I'm going after everything at this point. I'm just so motivated to just live and to do what's on my mind and just go for it. I don't hold back. It's time to just go. Let's go.
With all that you've done and even the current things that you're planning for the near future, C-Dub, what do you want your legacy to be? So when it's all over and you've done the work that it is that you've been sent here to do, what do you want to leave behind?
Honestly, I want to leave behind. I want people to look at my life and say, had he not been transparent or had he not been open with some of the things that he's done, I wouldn't even have known that was possible. I want people to have been inspired by the things that I've shown, the things in my lifestyle that I've shown, the advice I've given, the tutorials I've done. For me, some people say, and I understand, they always say, move in silence. Move in silence. You got to move in silence. Don't let everybody know what you're doing. But those same people wouldn't be moving the way they're moving had they not seen somebody do what they're trying to do for the most part, you know? And so for me, that gives me, it makes me, almost make me feel guilty to do that, because I know for me, from where I come from, that I wouldn't be where I am had I not moved to Atlanta and saw what was possible. Because where I'm from, you don't drive no luxury car until you're 70 years old, and not a black person at all. Like I didn't know it was possible for to be young and successful. I had no clue. Like, I don't know if people understand this, but I had no clue. I had never seen it before until I moved to Atlanta. And so when I think about that, I'm like, well, what is it that other people may not see unless I'm the one that show them, you know, that it's possible? And that's what I want to leave behind. Like, C-Dub showed me this was possible, and because I saw that, that's how I got to where I am. You know, that's how I feel.
C-Dub, I want to thank you so much for coming on to talk about all the things that you have done. And the sky is really the limit. I personally think, just given off of what you've been able to accomplish in the last decade, ain't no telling, because these are some very crazy ideas. I wish I would have thought of these, but I want to give you these last few moments to speak to whatever it is that you want to speak to. Whatever is on your heart, you have this time to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, and I said this on my page the other day, you know, so many people, y'all, we have so many ideas. We have so many things that we want to do, you know, so many goals that we want to reach. You know, sometimes it can feel so far away. And I just want to encourage someone that, first off, number one, is you have to stop looking at and thinking about how much further along would I be if I had started 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 1 year ago, you know? And instead of looking at it that way, think, how much further will you be 1 year from now if you start today? You know, how much further will you be 5 years from now if you start today? Start looking at it like that. The main thing is to start. I know you want to cross every T and dot every I and get everything perfect, but I'm here to tell you, it will never be perfect at first. It will never be. It won't happen. When you start, it's just not going to, you can try all you want to, because if you're a perfectionist, it will never be perfect, because that's who you are. You're a perfectionist. So you're always looking for something to perfect. So therefore, in order for you to be yourself, it has to not be perfect, right? So just start, just do it. Now is the time to just do it. I really believe that if you do it this time, it will work. All right. And if it doesn't work like you plan, it'll work in a better way. All right. So the main thing is to start.